This is TJ with Tech Made Easy. Welcome to the channel. My channel is all about making things affordable, practical, and easy. And as you saw in the thumbnail, I'm looking at replacing my home and business server. We keep both personal and business files on there. And maybe some people don't do that, but we've done that for years. We've had this server for 20 years. It's collected about 4 terabytes of data on here. It's not it doesn't have to be a robust computer because it's really small files that we use on there. It's mostly saving Excel, Word, PDFs, and our pictures on there. And so, the server I had is 10 years old now, and now I do have another server. I have a video server that's really robust, 64 terabytes, but I like to keep those servers separate. And so this year, in 2020, I really got, or 2023, I really got interested in these mini PCs, and I was thinking, how can I replace this? It's a mid-tower server with one of these mini PCs. But the problem is I have 4 terabytes of information on there. Now, I figured out how to get 3 NVMEs to work with this one, which would give me 12 terabytes, and with RAID 5 would give me 8 terabytes, which is plenty for this home file server. It'll take forever to fill it up another 4 terabytes with the kind of data that's on here. Plus, it's not really, like I said, it doesn't have to be really robust, but at the same time, I went to 10 gigabit networking in the house here. So I also wanted to do at least 5 gigabit or higher, or 5 gigabit to 10 gigabit. Which I do have a 5 gigabit USB NIC to use with this. But then on top of that, I was going through some stuff and I forgot I have this old office computer. This about 10 years ago, and it went out on us. And I just set it aside. I was going to recycle it, and I thought, what if it's just a power supply? So I ordered a power supply off of eBay for $15, and sure enough, it was a power supply. And both of these run idle. They idle at 35 watts, and these are just going to be idling most of the time anyway, because it's really just saving files, opening files back and forth, and it's just usually 1 or 2 people using it. That is it. And it's not used every day, so it's just going to be really running almost at idle all the time. But I'm more interested in the fact that they're smaller. And so, but now there are pros and cons to both of these. So now let's go and see what the specs are on these, see which one I chose, and the performance of the one that I chose. Let's get started. Okay, so really quick, before I reveal which one of these I use, I want to go over the specs, and I also want to go what took me down this rabbit hole to have a mini server. And it was really appealing to me. So one of the things I did, I made a video on this Asustor NAS. It takes 6 NVMe drives. And I thought, man, could I make my own DIY NAS out of NVMe's? And so this unit here is their 6-bay one. They have a 12-bay one. This one is, I think it's $400, and then the 12-bay is $800. The problem is with these mini NAS SSDs and NVMe's, once you get to 4 terabyte, they're expensive. They're around $200, give or take, depending on which brand you buy. And so when I made this video, I only bought 1 gigabit drives. And I used an HP. I didn't use this Dell here that's in the picture. I used an HP Z440, and I was able to utilize 5 NVMe drives in that unit, but it only gave me 5 terabytes. And I didn't want a full desktop. I just wanted to see if I could do it. So that's kind of what got me down this rabbit hole. I really like the size of that, and I really like to. I wish my video server was 100% SSDs and NVMe's, but that would be way expensive because it's 64 terabytes. There's no way I could afford to upgrade that. But let's just go into the specs of these machines and why I chose these. Oh, and one thing I wanted to mention is I did a video on how you can have a server complete with 24 terabytes with the processor and everything for $265. So you can see why for me to spend $200 just on one part is a stretch. and my video server obviously actually is made from the parts that I talk about in here, but there's just a lot of upgrades to it to make it, my video server a 10 gigabit server and perform at 10 gigabits. But I start with the base of this one here. So you can get into servers way cheap if you really want to, and if you're interested, watch that video, watch the other one that I did on the DIY. But let's just go into the specs here. So the Dell OptiPlex 9010. Now this one here, like I mentioned at the beginning, I forgot I even had this one until I did a video for somebody that I took an older version of one of these that I also had as an office computer and gave it to her so she could do photo editing on it with Linux. And but this one here has an i7 3770 on it. I already took the RAM out, so I went ahead and put in 16 gigs of RAM. Now in this particular one, I say that I'm saying that it can take one 4 terabyte NVMe, but it can actually take two, and it can take two 4 terabyte drives, and you'll see how that works out when we open up the machine and look at it and how I've configured it. And really quick, it is older, but it does come with a whole bunch of USB 2 and 3 ports, but they're older gens. They're not as efficient as the new ones today, obviously, and they're not as efficient as the ones that are on the HP 800 either. But these two slots right here, you can put PCI cards here, low profile ones, and this is where I put the NVMe at. And then you could put another NVMe here, but I want high performance, and so I want a 10 gig NIC in here. So I'm using one of these slots for a 10 gig NIC, and you'll see that as we look at it. Now, if you don't want 10 gig and you want to just use the onboard network card, then that's fine too. You could do that as well. But let's say you're going to use this for video editing, you would, as a side server, you would want a 10 gig NIC here. And I just want something that performs really fast, even though I don't need that high performance in this particular home business server, because we're dealing with small files and pictures and stuff like that. It's not like my video server. But anyway, so those are some of the specs there. And then on the HP, and I got my first one for $125, and it came with an i5 8510. They come with, and the Dell, I should mention, they come with i3s, i5s, and i7s, just depending on who's selling them, how they're configured. And the same thing with the HP. I don't think the HP comes with an i7. Actually, it does come with an i7 as well. So if you have to just kind of look around for that. And actually, when I bought this one, I thought I bought the one that was i7, but I ended up buying this i5. And again, on the ports here, just so you know, on the front here, this USB-C port is 10 gigabit. The one that's next to it, this 3.1, is 10 gigabit as well. But the one next to it is 5 gigabit. On the back here, you got two 10 gigabit USB ports and two 5 gigabit USB ports. But the big thing about this one here is you can put two NVMEs in it, or one SSD and one NVMe. And that is great, and that's why I picked this one, because yeah, you can get older ones, but the older ones you can only put an SSD or an NVMe or just an SSD only, and it really is appealing for me to be able to put in two NVMEs on this one. So that's why I bought this one. I bought it for the 10 gigabit USB support and the two NVMe drive ports that you can install in. So let's look at what I chose. I chose this one. Now this was really hard for me because I really need 3 drives. Now I can, on the HP, my plan was I have external adapters for NVMEs that you can plug into a USB port, and I was just going to use one of those, and so I'd have one of my drives running off of the NVMe, because I need 3 drives. And then I was going to use the other port for my 5 gigabit USB network adapter. But then when I saw this one, I was thinking, and this one didn't work, okay? I was going to recycle it years ago, and I just never did. And so I thought, well, maybe it doesn't work because of the power supply. So I ordered a power supply. It cost me $15 for the power supply, and whammo, it worked. So I thought, well, if this works, I'm gonna see I might use this. And the reason why is because I can put the 2 SSDs in here, and I can put the 1 NVMe there. Now, this is the whole thing. I did get a dual NVMe PCI card, but it doesn't see the second card because the PCI slots, one is 16 and one is 8x and 16x, but you can't go in and split those lanes up. It's not an editable BIOS for the PCI slots, and so I couldn't take advantage of the 2 NVMe card, which is fine because I really only need 3. My current video server, not video server, business server and file server is taking up 4 terabytes. So I need parity, and so if I use 3 drives and put them in a RAID 5, then that gives me 8 terabytes and room to grow with that. And it'll take me forever to fill up 8 terabytes on this home business server. The files that go on there aren't very big. So that's what I did, is I went ahead and let's go ahead and look inside the computer how I configured it. Okay, so here I am at my test bench with this, and I have it torn apart just because I'm testing it out for right now. It's real easy to get the case off though. It's just a handle and it just swings right off. The front is on hinges. You just pull that off and it comes off. Obviously I'll put those on when I'm done. But when you first open this machine up, it has this hard drive cage that sits here, and you just pull it up. And so when I'm done, these 2 SSDs will easily fit in there. And you could actually do 3 SSDs in here because there are 3 SATA ports on the motherboard. It's just that the 3rd SATA port is the slower SATA port, and I didn't want to reduce the efficiency of this machine, even though it's this file server and we really access small files on it. We access pictures on it, and so it doesn't have to be super robust. But I just want the speed. Because my other one's been a 1 gigabit server, network server for years and years and years long. I mean, like 10 years. And so, but all my server stuff now and my desktops, they're all 10 gigabit. So I really wanted a 10 gigabit. And that's one reason why I wanted to put SSDs in here, or NVMe's, is to get that throughput. So my NVMe card is right here, and like I mentioned, unfortunately I couldn't use the dual one, which really kind of bummed me out because I really wanted 4. I don't need 4 though. Like I explained, that I don't really need 12 gigabits of space for this one, but it's just the redundancy, I guess. So the network card is right here. Now this one is 10 gigabit, but it's dual. I wouldn't have put a dual in here, but I had this one laying around, and so I didn't get all these used on eBay, so that's kind of how I got this laid out. Now I did add some more RAM, like I mentioned. It only had 8 gigs of RAM, so I put in 2 more sticks, which gave me 16. True NAS, the more RAM you throw at it, the better off you are with it. And these older systems, RAM is cheap, and I just happen to have those RAM laying around and not using it, so it worked out. So anyway, when all's said and done, I'll just put this thing back together, and we'll be good to go. And I'll probably copy my files over next week from the old server, and be happy as a lark. Okay, here we are at my desktop. I use TrueNAS Scale to create my RAID 5 with. Now you can use whatever server software you want. If you want to use Unraid, you want to use Ubuntu, you want to use MediaVault, there's a whole bunch of options out there. But I just chose, I use TrueNAS Scale on both this server and my video server. But I want to talk about a little bit of the flexibility. So I mentioned when we looked inside that there was a 3rd SATA port. The reason why I didn't use that one is because it's a slower SATA port, and because I was putting in a 10 gigabit network card, I didn't want to slow the performance down by mixing that in with it, but I maybe should have tested it out. Maybe it would have performed fine. But anyway, so you can put 3 SSDs in this system, plus you can use the 2 PCI slots to put 2 NVMe's in it, so you could get a lot more storage in here if you really wanted to. Again, it's expensive storage because they're SSDs and NVMe's, but it's available. And then you could also, if you wanted a little bit faster speed than 1 gigabit, you could get 2.5 gig USB NIC. So it's just really flexible. And that's one of the reasons why I chose this. It gave me some other options other than the HP. So I want to just mention, you know, I don't need to run any apps on this server, but you could go in here and install some of TrueNAS's containers, you know, Plex. You got Nextcloud, you got a whole bunch of them. There's hundreds of them because they also have a third-party one that provides all these containers as well. So I just want to show the flexibility of this system. I do have a video server that I've maybe mentioned before, and I'm going to go ahead and go to that folder. So right here, this folder right here is my video server. I call it HOKNAS. I've got some movies in this folder here for testing purposes. And what we're going to do is we're going to copy a file. This home NAS folder is on the new server that I just put. I called it home NAS, and we're going to copy this 32 gig movie file over, and you're going to see that it's really efficient in copying. And I'm copying again. This is from my video server. My video server is 10 gigabit. Everything in my house is 10 gigabit now, and so I really wanted to bump up my home business server to 10 gigabit. And right now we're right at real close to copying over 800 megabytes, and which is really good for that little machine. And we're going to be limited a little bit to the SSDs because the SSDs only have 500 megabyte throughput. Same thing with the controller card, but the fact that it's running RAID and stuff makes it a little bit more efficient for copying, and with TrueNAS the way it handles files coming over. And so there we've copied that over. And one thing I do want to say here is the HP is great. I really like that HP Mini. I'm using one of those now as a second desktop for me. That I want to start this other video copying over. So I'm going to use a different program. Whenever I copy a lot of files over, I like to use this Crusader to copy those over. And we're going to go ahead and use a network chart here to show the speed of the network. So let's just pop this over here real quick. I'm going to grab that. Copy this here. Again, this is 322 gigabytes. We're not going to go through and watch this whole thing over. I just want to show you how fast it's copying. I mean, we're 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 gigabytes now. We're running approximately between 1,000 megabytes to 800 megabytes per second. We're already at 20 gigabytes copying here. So you can see it's really fast. Now, I will say this about the HP again. If you're running just like a whole bunch of Docker apps where you don't need tons of storage, it's a great option. Or if all the storage you need is 4 terabytes, or you want to mirror that, the one thing that I would do with the HP is I would do a Nextcloud any time of the day on that thing. That would make an excellent Nextcloud server. And so what you'll see here is we're cruising along here. Now, one thing I do want to say here, the reason why this stops because those are big files that it's copying when it hesitates there, and then when it stops. And so what this does though is this actually averages out. When you first start copying over there, it copies a little bit faster, and it averages out about 500 megabytes. When you're copying this many files over, it goes down to about 500 megabytes. Which is still great. I can't complain about that at all. So the performance of this is great, is awesome. Now I do want to mention something really quick here. This Linux desktop, and this is just pet peeve of mine. I have my memory over here, and it says it's using 12 to 13 gigabytes of RAM. And when I was showing how to put this desktop in Linux Mint together, which is just point and click, and that's it. So one of the viewers noticed how much RAM it was using. It wasn't using this much at the time. I think it was like between 3 and 6. I can't remember. And made a comment how inefficient Linux was because of all the RAM it was using. And so I had to make a comment back to him. When I make these videos, many times I have virtual desktops running with other programs on those virtual desktops. You can see, and whenever I'm in a browser, I have lots of tabs open, and that's what's taking up all the memory here. So I just wanted to quickly mention that, you know, not everything is perceived correctly when you're looking at someone doing a video. So I'm glad he actually mentioned it, because there's probably others that saw that on there, and I did respond back saying, hey, when I make a video, I will have other applications open up on my other virtual desktops, and maybe in this case I shouldn't have had all those open, but that's beside the point. The point is that this is great. We're already at 80 gigabytes of copying here. So one of the things that I threw out was pricing. But so let's just review the pricing of all this. So if you're going to do something like this, what's the actual cost going to be of everything? Okay, so either one of these PCs, you know, the small form factor one, the Dell, or the HP Mini, the Dell is going to, you can get those for around $70 or less, or more, depending on who's selling them on eBay. They will usually come with some 4 to 8 gigs of RAM, sometimes 16 gigs. They'll come with, they may or may not come with a hard drive, which is no big deal. But they'll come with either like an i3, i5, or an i7. So just depending on which one you get. Now the HP, a lot of those now, I got my second HP Mini for $85, and that's not available anymore. And so I think there's somebody must have got those recyclers. You know, they get stuff in and they had several of them. They just didn't have one, and so that was a great deal on that. But generally, you're looking at $100. 125, and obviously you can pay more for that, but I wouldn't pay more than $125 for one. And both of them that I bought came with 16 gigs of RAM on it, and they had 2 different processors on them though. So, but they're still, I think they're i5s, both of them that I got. And the NICs I used on eBay were between $35 and $45, and I always just buy 10 gig used NICs. Although 10 gig NICs now are coming down. I think now you can get them brand new for around $70 to $80. 8 gigs of RAM on eBay used, $10 to $20 if you want 8 or 16 gigs of RAM that you're trying to get. 2 SSDs, 1 NVMe. Those run around $200, give or take, depending on who you buy. And so I just put $600 there total because I got 3 of them. And really, the most expensive part of this server are those NVMe drives. And that's why I really wish that these prices on those drives would go down. And like I said, it's really a value to buy used server drives because you can get them so cheap. At that price there, I could probably get, I would say, 80 terabytes of hard drive space for $600 buying used hard drives on eBay. But anyway, I put a total there, a question mark, because it depends. You know, if you're going to do this, the price depends on what you can get them for, or what you may not buy everything that I got on here. If you're interested in this. Anyway, this is TJ with Tech Made Easy. I hope this was helpful and informative. Have a great day.
Now that was easy